That's why we worship pride.
Well,
I have
pride
a
has
different
always
take
been
on
pride
that.
has always been regarded as the ultimate sin.
Before we go down that path, let me string this whole idea together. You're the canary in the coal mine because
Why would that be, I wonder?
because you won't shut up about things that people who believe, because I take the stance that totalitarians actually are trying to do good. Some of them aren't, but I think that makes it too easy to push them away. Assume that they are just possessed by the wrong idea. And so they believe, I know what's best. I legitimately know what's best for humanity.
Yeah, but that's the problem.
I get it. Bear with me.
know.
And you are...
Who's the I that knows, just out of curiosity?
in that statement?
That's the question.
I'm saying I know how wrong that can go. Those people are saying they think they have identified the social structure that will lead to a utopia.
They identify their I with the spirit of totalitarianism that has possessed them.
They haven't gotten that far.
They don't
They
know
may not
that.
even be smart enough to get that far, which is a whole nother thesis I have about the complexity of ideas, which I think is a big part of what causes this problem, is people cannot think through these incredibly complicated ideas. So they need bumper stickers. You give them a bumper
They
sticker.
need parables.
Ooh, you're trying to make it positive again. People will take a bumper sticker long before they will take a
Well,
parable.
bumper
Parables
stickers.
are
Yes,
way
that's
more
true.
complicated.
Yes, yes. That's you know what slogan means.
Yes. No, I don't know what it means.
It's from the Welsh, Slúg Gairm. It means battle cry of the dead.
Why of the dead?
Because slogans are dead words, and they're
Like as in
they're
dead rot
brandished
wood?
they're brandished by the army of the dead that would rather drag the living into the pit than allow the living to prevail. Battle cry of the dead. It's the army of the dead speaking through the mouths of people that use slogans.
Okay, I'm going to translate that.
Yeah.
You said earlier that...
You know how Solzhenitsyn talked about people who were possessed by an ideology, right? And their words had no personal relationship to them. They were merely mimicking an ideology. All the communists said exactly the same thing. There's nothing alive about that if everyone is saying exactly the same thing. Well, because, and this is, I suppose, where the left has something accurate perverted. There's a diversity and a vitality and originality in living speech that's not there in the land of cliche and slogan. That's why you can't listen to people. Like when I listen to ideologues talk, it's just buzzing. I can't even hear it. My mind goes elsewhere instantly. There's nothing about it that's compelling. There's nothing that's gripping.
Because they're not testing the idea against feedback?
There's multiple reasons because the speech is an indication that while they're speaking, they're not treading the golden path.
What's the golden path?
It's the path that grips attention and is inspiring.
Okay, I have to say, you can give me space. I need to say this.
That's fine.
All right, so...
I'm not trying to speak elusively.
No, I know. You and I just use such different language, and I think it will be very useful for people to hear the same thing said in like a Rosetta Stone way.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I've heard you talk about this a lot. When you go out and do your talks, part of what makes them so captivating is you are actually taking a living idea that you were trying to explore, golden path.
Yeah.
It's not rigid dogma. It is an idea you want to find the truth of. And so you go out in front of a crowd to assess whether they're taking it in, what kind of silence, perfect. And so that idea is living in as much as it is not rigid, it is not fossilized. You want it to be tested.
It's not predetermined, it's not dogmatic. Right, that's right. That's why it's not dead. It's not already formulated. It's not a corpse. It's something alive that's happening right then and there, right? Right. And that's something that only spontaneous speech can manage. Even books suffer from the lack of that. Now, books have their utility. In a book, when you read a book, you can deeply investigate an idea, but it does risk a kind of death of the words on the page, because they're not as finely attuned to the demands of the situation, the specific situation, as a spontaneous speech can be when it's at its highest. Because it's of the moment. That notion that, that's the third person of the Trinity, right? That spirit that possesses you when you speak in an inspired manner. That's a symbolic representation of the living spirit of of exploration in relationship to the highest goal. That's really what it is. And so, you know, you might say, well, what do you have to be aiming at if your goal is to speak in that manner? And the answer is, well, you have to be doing your best for the best in you and other people. That has to be your aim. And then you have to speak truth insofar as you're capable, and that will do the trick. And there's no difference between that and the paraclete that Christ left in the Gospels behind after his departure. It's a reflection of the idea of the Holy Spirit. It's the baptismal spirit. It's the Spirit of God that moves upon the waters at the beginning of time. It's the creative manifestation of the structure that extracts habitable order from chaos. It's all of those things in its living form. That's why it's inspiring. Why else would it be inspiring? Why else would it attract and gleam, right? Or have motive force, right? I mean, and you can think of it instinctually if you want. It speaks biologically. Those are words that speak to the deepest core of your being, materially for that matter, because everything stacks up. If everything's unified in the highest place, everything stacks up. And that is the case. Right?
That to me is the final test of an idea's validity, if it will stack and if it will point you to things that are true.
Mm-hmm. That's technically true, by the way, because so the reason that you have 5 senses is so that your orientation occurs as a consequence of things that are stacked. When all 5 senses report the same thing, you have a reasonable assurance that what you're seeing corresponds sufficiently to reality so you won't perish. Right now, that isn't enough, because then I'll take the evidence of my senses and contrast it with the evidence of yours from your slightly different perspective, and then we'll do that collectively. We're doing a lot of stacking in order to filter the infinite sufficiently so that we can model it well enough to move forward. A lot of stacking. And that is, there's a technical branch of psychometrics, construct theory, that psychologists have developed to help distinguish between concepts that are real from concepts that aren't, like the phrenological concepts, for example, that people used to use to map the hypothetical functions of the brain. There was something in that idea, but they weren't real concepts. How do you know if a concept is real? Well, you can measure it using multiple different instruments at different times and in different places and get the same report. It's something like that.
Now, more than ever, the ability to see through the chaos of the traditional news media is an absolute necessity. Biased narratives, selective reporting, all of it obstruct the kind of informed, critical thinking that all of us should be striving for. That's why I have to tell you about Ground News. Ground News compiles stories from across the global political spectrum, giving you every angle so you get the full picture. You can see a story like the one here, which has been covered by more than 260 sources. What I find really interesting is that 36% of the sources lean left, 33% are in the center, and 31% lean right. Now, these are based on ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations, and if you keep scrolling, you'll see every article about that topic. Another cool feature is the blind spot feed, which shows you stories that are disproportionately covered by only one side of the political spectrum. Go to ground.news/Tom and sign up. Subscriptions start at just $1 a month, or you can get 40% off unlimited access via the Vantage subscription. Check out Ground News and stay informed, guys. I am very impressed by this service, and I hope you guys will give it a shot.
Right.
This is why the case against you scares me. This is people with dead ideas, enslaving others with bumper stickers, slogans that they can hold on to, that makes them feel morally virtuous, but they are not
simple. They're simple and morally virtuous. Yes, it's a viciously tempting combination, right?
Correct.
One idea explains everything. Plus, once you brandish that idea, all your moral work is done, right? Very, very tempting. That is definitely the temptation of a deadly slogan, like from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. You can destroy the world with that dead weapon. Yeah. And we did a pretty good job of trying that. And we're not done.
Apparently, yeah. So this is why I think you have to be, from their lens, you have to be silenced, because you force that idea to compete for validity in the realm of ideas. And if it really is ideas, and that's all we have.
If it doesn't compete, in the realm of ideas, it will compete in the realm of flesh.
Yes.
Right. Everyone needs to know that.
And its unwillingness to compete in the realm of ideas is a signal that it's not valid, which is why they can't put, this is exactly why Biden saying, I'm not going to debate scares the life out of me, because that's what you do when you can't win. Like if you know your ideas are more compelling, you step to the mic all day long.
Or if you know that you should subject them to debate, so if you're wrong, you could learn.
God, even
right?
better.
Because maybe that's even what you want in a leader. You don't necessarily need a leader who's right, because God help you. You're not going to find that, but you could at least find one who is willing to put his ideas to the test to discover where he's wrong. That's a leader. That's someone with courage, right? That's someone willing to kill the father, in a sense, to kill the tyrannical father, because the tyrannical father is the presumption of your own dead ideas. That, not psychologically speaking, that's the case. That's the giant that the hero slays in order to make the new world. Right? The dogma of the past, the dead dogma of the past. It might have even been valid at some point. But you want a leader who embodies that spirit and not necessarily the correct knowledge. Because, you know, Piaget, Jean Piaget, the developmental psychologist, he knew this, is that the deepest truth is a proper formulation of the process by which truth itself is generated. Right? And that's what Piaget was trying to discover when he evaluated children. He knew that.
Again?
The deepest, I don't know if I can say that again. The deepest truth is the representation of the process by which truth itself is generated. That's the hero story.
Wow.
It's a process. Truth is a process.
Agreed.
Truth is a spirit rather than a set of dead facts.
Why do people run from it?
Because it forces you to pick up your cross. I mean, really, obviously, like, why do people run is the question. Well, what do they run from? Pain and malevolence. Well, why? Well, it's obvious why. What's not obvious is how you could not do that. Well, you know, the entire biblical corpus is an analysis of why you shouldn't run. What would mean not to run? What it would mean if you fully ceased running. That's the story of Christ. The story of Christ is the story of a man, the man, let's say, who ceased running. That's what the story is.
Can I give you an alternate take that scares me so badly, and I think I'm right about this?
Okay.
I think
well, if it scares you, that's a good indication that you might be right.
Yeah. The big problem here is that to pick up a cross and be willing to suffer what Jesus suffered, you have to have a conviction that you're right, that hell awaits on the other side of not doing that. Most people cannot think through ideas that complicated and be certain enough that they'd be willing to be torn down.
Well, that's reflected to some degree. That's reflected to some degree in the structure of, especially the Catholic Church, and Dostoevsky pointed to that in the Brothers Karamazov. There's a scene in the Brothers Karamazov where Christ comes back to earth in the midst of the Spanish Inquisition, and he performs his miracles and goes about his spiritual business, goes about being the process of the word, and the Inquisitor comes and arrests him and throws him in prison. And then comes down in the middle of the night and says, look, you know, we don't need you around. You're a lot of trouble. We've taken your impossible message, your impossible demands, and we recast them so that flawed people can manage. And the last thing we need is you to show back up and destroy everything we've done to make what you had to say palatable, because people just can't manage it. It's too much. And Christ listens, and at the end, he kisses the Inquisitor, who turns white and leaves, but he leaves the door open when he leaves. And that's a complicated answer to your question, but you are right in a sense that it's too much to ask, but you're wrong, and that people turn to lesser solutions, mediated solutions, like a belief in an external Christ, let's say. That's one way of thinking about it, rather than a joint belief in an internal and external Christ, which would be more comprehensive. And they turn to that instead of seeking out the whole adventure. The problem with that is, and this is the problem, is that you don't have a choice about your cross exactly. You only have a choice about how you will bear it, because death and hell are coming for you. And that's that. There's no escape from that. And so all you can choose is the manner in which you confront it. And you can do it voluntarily, wholeheartedly, in good faith, with courage, or you can do it any of the insane multiplicity of other ways that clamor for your attention. That's right. My name is Legion, right? There's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. Right. So the Christian message fundamentally is that your best bet, all things considered, and truly all things considered, is to take the whole burden on. Like eyes wide open, right? That's what Abraham does, for example, when he goes on his great adventure. And that's what Job does.